Greetings, comrades! Every country has certain iconic places that tourists simply must see, according to common stereotypes. In Egypt, it's the pyramids, in France, the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre, in China, the Great Wall, and in the US, Manhattan and the Statue of Liberty. Usually it's quite straightforward, something in the capital or major city that is deeply historical and serves as a symbol of the country. But Russia has managed to stand out here. What appeals most to foreign tourists is not a specific place, a particular landmark, a natural wonder or a museum. It's an experience. And it seems quite strange at first glance. 7 days on the road aboard a not exactly state-of-the-art train with no opportunity to eat properly or bathe. I'm talking, of course, about a trip on the Trans-Siberian Railway. While foreigners dream of riding the rails that connects western and eastern Russia, Russians shudder at the mere mention of the Moscow-to-Vladivostok train. Let's figure out how this came to be. And before you ask, hey, what about the Kremlin, Lake Baikal, the Hermitage? 2 weeks ago, specifically for this video, I conducted a poll asking my viewers which trip to Russia they would choose if they had only one chance to go. Visiting the capitals, visiting natural wonders, visiting the heart of Russia, or a 7-day trip along the Trans-Siberian Railway. And yes, to everyone who voted, I am sorry. I actually knew in advance which option would win, and as expected, nearly 40% of my viewers chose a trip along the world's longest railway. 9,288 kilometers, 7 days, 87 cities, and a single train window through which you'll see it all. It all sounds wonderful, as if this really is the best way to experience the diversity and beauty of Russia in just 1 week. 100% authentic Russian experience. But have you ever wondered why this route is so popular with foreigners, yet so few Russians choose Trans-Siberian Railway as a vacation option? Perhaps it's because Russians prefer the Cis-Siberian… Okay, sorry. Today I'll tell you all about the ins and outs and potential pitfalls of this kind of trip, and by the end of the video I hope you'll be able to decide for yourself whether it's worth it. Well, we can't do without a bit of history, can we? I'll try to keep it brief. On May 31st, 2026, Russia will celebrate the 135th anniversary of the start of construction of the Siberian Railway. It was an imperial project, the most grandiose transportation project of the Russian Empire in its entire history. The first stone was laid, or more accurately, the first wheelbarrow of dirt was dumped onto the track by none other than the future Emperor Nicholas II. Ironically, it was along this very same route that Russia's last emperor would embark on his final journey. Construction of the railway, by the way, began at the opposite end, from Vladivostok. This was logical since there were already enough railways in the European part of Russia to which the Siberian line could later be connected. The Amur Bridge was the last section to be completed, and regular rail services began operating from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok in 1916. Wait a minute, from St. Petersburg? Yes. The historical route from the western to the eastern edge of Russia didn't quite look the same as it does today. Trains departed from St. Petersburg and traveled through Vologda and Vyatka, now Kirov, to Perm, where they connected with the main Siberian section. The railway was built at public expense, the state was the sole owner of the line, so it was designed with lofty political goals. To tie the Far East to the metropolis, facilitate the movement of troops in the event of a Chinese or Japanese threat, and simplify the transport of minerals from beyond the Urals to central Russia. Initially, trains on the Siberian Iron Road moved so slowly that stagecoach drivers could easily overtake them. The railway incurred massive losses and had more critics than admirers. Everything changed with the arrival of the Bolsheviks, as always. Although it was precisely the Trans-Siberian Railway that could have been the cause of their defeat in the Civil War. In 1918, when the Czechoslovak Legion, whose convoy stretched for thousands of kilometers along the railway line, rebelled against Soviet authority, the Bolsheviks lost 2/3 of their territory within a few months. The backbone of the empire was broken, and the country fell apart. The railway suffered severe damage as a result of the civil war. Many bridges and tunnels were blown up, and the rolling stock was destroyed. But Stalin understood perfectly well that without the Trans-Siberian Railway, the industrialization of Siberia would simply be impossible. So enormous resources were poured into its restoration. The starting point was now the new old capital, Moscow, specifically Yaroslavsky station. From then on, the railway became an integral part of Soviet history. In 1930s, it played a significant role in the emergence of the Gulag. Millions of prisoners were sent to Siberia in thousands of trains. During World War II, thanks to the Trans-Siberian Railway, dozens of factories with all their equipment were quickly evacuated from the European part of the country. This saved industry and led to victory over Germany, and subsequently the industrial development of Siberia. Some rightly consider the Trans-Siberian Railway a modern wonder of the world. It is one of the main arteries of global trade, at least until you know what, and truly a great monument to Russian engineering. But is that the only thing that attracts foreigners who want to ride it? Of course not. The charm of the Trans-Siberian Railway lies not simply in getting from point A to point B from Moscow to Vladivostok. It's not just about appreciating the history of the places you visit, or even seeing Yekaterinburg, Irkutsk or Ulan-Ude. It's about the unique experience of the journey itself. As the saying goes, the journey is half the adventure. In this case, however, the journey isn't just half, it's 99%. So let's imagine what awaits you if you decide to take this trip. Trains to Vladivostok depart twice a day from Yaroslavsky station, with both trains leaving around midnight. Ticket prices are quite reasonable, starting at 17,000 rubles for a third-class seat and 30,000 rubles for a private compartment. Of course, there are luxury tourist trains, or at least they were. The Golden Eagle train with unique porcelain teacups and $15,000 for a 15-day one-way trip. But you are looking for an authentic experience, aren't you? Well, your journey will begin at Yaroslavsky station, which is quite beautiful in its own right. It looks a bit like a medieval castle. Inside, columns, frescoes, tiles and intricate wrought iron details. You board the train, settle into your compartment, change into a comfortable tracksuit and slippers, make up your bunk and what exactly? What lies ahead? Actually, the list is long. Historic Yaroslavl, then Perm and Yekaterinburg in the Urals, Russia's oil and gas capital Tyumen, Novosibirsk, Krasnoyarsk, Irkutsk, Ulan-Ude, Chita and Vladivostok. It's breathtaking, isn't it? So much to visit and see. And then there's the Trans-Mongolian route option, which includes China and of course Mongolia. But if we are talking about the traditional travel route, you will be able to see these cities, but not actually visit them. And you won't get to really see everything. For example, you'll be passing through Yaroslavl in the middle of the night. The stop in Perm is 23 minutes at 5 am, in Yekaterinburg and Ulan-Ude 30 minutes, and in Omsk 16 minutes. Out of 174 stops, only 9 last more than 40 minutes. Yes, you'll spend as much as an hour in Novosibirsk and Khabarovsk, but you'll barely have enough time to dash into a nearby shop for a souvenir. So prepare yourself to simply admire the view. Fortunately, there's plenty to admire. The famous Russian rivers, the Kama, Ob, Yenisei and Amur. Trains usually slow down at crossings, so tourists have the chance to admire the watery landscapes. You'll pass the Ural Mountains, the Sayan Mountains, the Hamar-Daban Range and the Sikhatay-Alin Range along the shores of the Sea of Japan. And of course, the Pearl of Siberia, the Great Lake Baikal. The train travels along its shores for 200 kilometers, so you'll definitely get to see the lake from various angles. So, you'll be able to see 87 Russian cities and countless beautiful landscapes from the train window. A great start. And what else is on the menu? Well, you know, nothing. It's just you, your compartment, your fellow passengers, and the authentic Russian train setting all around you. A stern conductor in uniform serving you tea, a huge titan filled with water for that very tea, and the traditional metal cup holder where the teacup is placed. No, that's exactly why many people take this trip. A leisurely journey steeped in the Soviet atmosphere. Hours of deep sleep to the rhythm of the wheels and the quiet sounds of Russian conversation. Endless forests outside the window, getting to know the locals, the constant smell of dried fish, vodka and cigarettes. What, doesn't sound so appealing anymore? Same here. Are you sure you want to spend a few days cooped up on a train with strangers without being able to wash properly or eat a decent meal? No, of course, modern train cars have electrical outlets and the toilet isn't just a hole in the floor. You can wash up and of course there's a dining car. But in terms of comfort, the experience is still far worse than staying at even the most basic 2-star hotel. Moreover, on the Premier Россия train, there are no first-class 2-person compartments. This means you'll be sharing a small space with at least 3 strangers, or even just a regular Platskart with no way to hide from prying eyes, even for a moment. And on a regular train running the same route, there might sometimes be a first-class compartment for 2, but it might not have a shower. Pick your poison, as they say. Then again, you could look at it as a positive thing. You get a better feel for Russia in a third-class Platskart sleeper car. There are more people around to talk to, and you can hear their stories and tales about their cities and regions. That's exactly right. It's in the third-class car where you can experience unforgettable social interaction, delightful nighttime soundscapes, and the sense of unity and all-encompassing equality and solidarity. Where today you're smelling your neighbor's feet from the bunk above, and tomorrow he's smelling yours. Actually, as I already said, you'll have to socialize one way or another, you have no other choice. Yes, you can buy out an entire compartment and hold a week-long retreat there, but you'll still have to come out for meals. Boiled eggs, chicken wrapped in foil, Doshirak instant noodles, and of course, as I've already said, tea from the signature cups. If you haven't tried all of this, you haven't really ridden a Russian train. However, if you are not traveling alone, you won't be able to avoid any of this. It's customary on the train to share a meal with your neighbors. And once they find out you're a foreigner, they literally shove half of their food supplies down your throat. That's the famous Russian train hospitality. Oh, and if you think that just because the train cars have become more modern, the very essence of the trip has changed, think again. Yes, now you won't stink for 7 days since there's finally a shower and it's practically free, you only have to pay for bath supplies. There are outlets in the compartment, air conditioning in some places and even Wi-Fi. But there are always caveats. Having a shower doesn't guarantee that all your neighbors would use it. The outlets might not work, or there might be few of them that there are people in the compartment. The Wi-Fi only connects to the train local media server, and if there's no mobile data outside, which is 70% of the journey, you have no internet. There is a dining car, but for most of the trip you'll still have to make do with overpriced snacks and instant meals sold either in the car itself or at the few kiosks at station. You won't be able to bring a ton of entertainment with you either. You'll only have one storage compartment under or above your bunk, enough for a small suitcase and a backpack at most. So it turns out that pretty much all you can do during this nearly full week-long journey is eat, sleep, and gaze out the window at the trees rushing by, which make up 80% of the scenery outside. And socialize, of course. In this kind of atmosphere, it is very easy to lose track of time, especially since you'll be crossing as many as 8 time zones. What time is it now? What day is it? How much longer do you have to go? By the 3rd day it won't matter. And now we come to the most important part. How you'll pass the time. You'll be drinking, most likely vodka. And this is where you need to be careful, because it's easy to lose your sense of moderation when you lose track of time on the road. So take my word for it. If your new fellow travelers on the Moscow-to-Vladivostok train strongly recommend going to the dining car for a hot-to-hot drink, decline and pretend you don't understand the word they are saying. It might seem like a great idea to get to know the mysterious Russian soul a little better, but trust me, it's not. At best, you'll wake up with a terrible hangover after a hellish drinking binge. At worst, it will do the same thing, only it will happen at a local police station cell somewhere at the Igraeva station, because you got kicked off the train for drunken rowdiness. And good luck trying to convince the local cops that you are not a spy. So seriously, think carefully right away about exactly what kind of experience you want to have. If you want a peaceful ride, taking in the beauty of nature without getting too close to local customs, traditions and the people on the train, don't step outside your own car. If you're looking for something exotic and exciting, come on down to the dining car. You're almost guaranteed to find adventure there, but don't say I didn't warn you. Again, don't expect it to be easy to communicate with your fellow passengers. Only 2 or 3 people in the entire car will speak English well enough, so you'd better brush up on your Russian. The thing is, very few local people travel this route from start to finish, especially for tourism. The rest are just going about their business between cities. It's a popular way for Siberians to travel overnight from Omsk to Novosibirsk, for example. You hop on in the evening, sleep 8 hours and you are there. But I can't imagine anyone in their right mind actually choosing a 7-day train ride from Moscow to Vladivostok over a flight. Well, unless they have 8 suitcases of luggage or are physically unable to fly. A flight from Moscow to Vladivostok takes 8 hours and actually costs less than a week of being jostled around in a train compartment. You're literally paying more money to suffer for a week instead of flying there in a day. Plus, again, for us Russians, a 7-day train trip is the most boring thing imaginable. We've seen it all before and ridden them 100 times. But for a foreigner, it'll all be a novelty, at least for the first couple of days. So, just remember that a Trans-Siberian journey isn't a tour or a cruise, but a purely practical trip from point A to point B on a regular train, without any guided tours or sightseeing. Yes, you can really see all of Russia and all its landscapes here. Mountains, plains, rivers, lakes, hills and so on. And treat yourself to a week-long vacation free of worries and hassles. But if you really want to discover that mysterious Russian soul and see the full diversity of Russian cities, just split this route up. Right from Moscow to Yekaterinburg, perhaps even along the southern branch of the railway, with a mandatory stop in Kazan. Stay in the Urals for a day or 2, take a couple of excursions, then fly to Lake Baikal, admire its beauty, and continue on to Ulan-Ude, Khabarovsk and finally the grand finale, Vladivostok with its famous 9,288-kilometer marker, where you can take a selfie. No, seriously, this trip would be so much more exciting if you added stops for at least a day or 2 at some of these points. It's logistically more complicated than just buying one ticket, but far more rewarding. You don't even have to take planes. There are separate trains running between all the Trans-Siberian stops. There you'll meet interesting fellow travelers, try local foods, and won't have time to go stir crazy within the 4 walls of your compartment. One big win all around. Thanks for watching, and as always, a huge shout out to my biggest supporters: Елизавета Zakharova, Kirill Klimuk, Petr Ilich, Lyudmila Ilyanova, Jonathan Sheltze, and one more member who wished to remain anonymous. See you guys next time.